Imagine a family dinner, laughter, and then silence. This is what happened to the Wright family in 1995. They vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and chilling speculation. Join us as we explore the eerie events surrounding their disappearance. The small town of Brookville, nestled among the pine-covered hills of Oregon, was the kind of place where nothing truly unusual ever happened. Life moved slowly, predictably, until the spring of 1995, when the Wright family, a seemingly ordinary household of four, simply disappeared. No warning, no signs of struggle. One moment they were there, the next, they were gone. The Wrights were well known in the community. Stephen Wright, 42, was a local mechanic who owned a modest but respected auto repair shop on the edge of town. He was known for his quiet demeanor and strong work ethic. His wife, Lisa Wright, 39, was a part-time librarian at the town's public library. She was warm, organized, and always ready with a smile. Together, they had two children, Emily, aged 11, and Jacob, aged 7. Both kids attended Brookville Elementary School and were described by teachers as polite, intelligent, and well-adjusted. The family lived in a cozy, two-story house at the end of Maple Drive. The house, painted pale blue with white shutters, was surrounded by a wooden fence and flower beds Lisa tended to religiously. It was the kind of home that gave off the comforting feeling of routine and safety. Neighbors often recalled seeing Stephen washing his car on weekends or the children playing in the yard while Lisa read on the porch. But in the weeks leading up to their disappearance, a few subtle things began to shift. Some neighbors later reported that Lisa had seemed more distracted than usual, sometimes staring out her window for long periods or taking sudden walks alone at dusk, something uncharacteristic for her. Others mentioned that Stephen had closed the auto shop early on several occasions and looked more tense, more on edge. And then there were the late-night lights. Neighbors noticed that the house's upstairs lights stayed on into the early morning hours multiple times that month, something completely out of routine for the typically early sleeping Wright family. On April 28, 1995, the Wrights were seen going about their day as usual. Stephen was at his shop. Closing around 5 p.m., Lisa picked up the children from school, stopped at the grocery store, and was seen chatting briefly with their neighbor, Mrs. Delaney. Emily and Jacob played in the front yard around sunset. A quiet, peaceful evening, or so it seemed. The following day, April 29th, something felt off. Mrs. Delaney, who lived next door, noticed the Wright's car, an old station wagon, was gone from the driveway early in the morning. That wasn't unusual, but what caught her attention was the mail. By late afternoon, Saturday's mail was still untouched. So was Sunday's. By Monday, it remained. Then came the newspapers piling up on the porch and the trash bins not rolled out to the curb like clockwork. Concerned, Mrs. Delaney called the police for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found the front door locked. There were no signs of forced entry. Everything inside looked perfectly normal. Dishes in the sink, half-full glasses of water on the dining table, a plate of uneaten toast in the kitchen. Beds were made, jackets still hanging by the door, toothbrushes still wet. Even Lisa's purse sat on the kitchen counter with her wallet and keys inside. It was as if the Wright family had simply stepped out for a walk and never returned. The eeriest detail? The family dog, Buster, a golden retriever, was still inside the house. Unharmed, but clearly distressed and hungry. There were no signs of a struggle, no packed bags, no goodbye notes. Their bank accounts showed no withdrawals. Their phones had no outgoing calls, and none of their friends or relatives had heard from them. This day, the last known confirmed sighting of the entire Wright family was around 8 p.m. on that Friday night, April 28th, when a neighbor saw them all in the living room through their front window. They were watching TV, bathed in the soft blue glow of the screen. A seemingly ordinary evening, closing out an ordinary day. And then, nothing. The community of Brookville was stunned. Candlelight vigils were held. Flyers with the family's faces were posted in every shop window and on every telephone pole. Friends and neighbors were interviewed. Their home was searched again and again, but there was no sign of foul play. No sign of where they might have gone. The case, even in those early days, felt different. Not like a kidnapping. Not like a runaway. There was no logical explanation to the hours turned into days, and days into weeks, the Wright family's disappearance became more than just a local mystery. It became a haunting puzzle, one with no clear pieces, no visible edges, and no picture to guide the way. That it didn't take long for the initial shock of the Wright family's disappearance to ripple through the small town of Brookville. What started as an unsettling mystery soon turned into a full-scale investigation, drawing attention from local authorities, the FBI, and the national media. But no matter how many times they scoured the Wrights' home, interviewed friends and family, or combed through the thick woods surrounding the town, there was still no sign of where they had gone or why. The empty house on the morning of May 1st, 1995, the police were called back to the Wright residence, this time to carry out a more thorough search of the house. Officers, accompanied by forensics experts, combed through the rooms with painstaking care. They opened every drawer, every cabinet, and inspected every inch of the house, but found nothing of interest. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken windows, and nothing out of place. In fact, it was the eerie ordinariness of the scene that was so unsettling. The Wrights had seemed to have vanished in the middle of their daily lives. The kids' shoes were neatly placed by the door, their backpacks still sitting on the kitchen table. A bowl of cereal sat half-eaten on the counter. The TV remote was next to the couch, as though someone had just walked away mid-show. Their cell phones were still in the house, charging on the kitchen counter. But most haunting of all were the empty bedrooms upstairs. Each child's room was in perfect order, as though the Wrights had left for a vacation. Lisa's wedding ring was sitting on the bathroom counter, and Stephen's wallet, complete with cash and ID, sat untouched on the dresser. Even the family's beloved dog, Buster, had been left behind, roaming the house, anxious and confused. The police checked the yard, the garage, and the nearby wooded areas, but there was no sign of the family. No broken fences, no footprints, no signs that they had ever left the house. It was as though the Wright family had stepped out of their home and simply disappeared into thin air. The missing car 2 days later, the real mystery began to unfold. On May 3rd, a motorist driving along the isolated stretch of Highway 22 reported seeing an abandoned car parked on the shoulder of the road. It was an old tan station wagon, the Wrights' car. The vehicle was nearly 30 miles from their home, deep in the woods, and had clearly been involved in some kind of collision. The front end was crumpled, and the driver's side airbag had deployed. Upon arrival, police confirmed the vehicle was indeed the Wright family's. The car had been left in an area that no one from the family had ever mentioned traveling to. It was unclear how the car had ended up there, or whether the family had even been inside at the time of the crash. No personal items were found in the car, no bags, no wallets, no IDs. It was empty, just like the house. The location of the crash itself was strange. The station wagon was found near a small forest clearing, not far from a stream, with no apparent sign of a struggle or accident other than the impact. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of the family anywhere nearby. The police scoured the area for hours, but there was nothing to suggest the Wrights had walked away from the car, nor any sign of them in the immediate vicinity. It was as if they had vanished while the car was in motion. The investigation begins with the discovery of the car. The investigation quickly moved into high gear. The FBI was called in, and a massive search operation was launched, spanning miles of the thick forests and rugged terrain around Brookville. Dogs were brought in to track scents, and volunteers combed through the woods, their flashlights cutting through the dark underbrush, searching for any trace of the missing family. Despite the intense efforts, the search yielded little. The dogs had picked up the family's scent at the car, but then lost it quickly, as if the Wrights had simply disappeared into the woods. No footprints were found in the dirt, and there were no signs of any campsites or shelters the family might have used. No one had seen or heard anything suspicious, and all the leads turned out to be dead ends. The police quickly realized that there was something deeply unusual about this case. This wasn't like any typical missing persons case they had dealt with before. Most disappearances are the result of accidents, crimes, or voluntary departures. But the Wrights hadn't left anything behind. There were no traces of struggle, no obvious reasons for them to run away. Their sudden disappearance made no sense. And then there was the car itself. Why had the family been so far from home? If they had been involved in an accident, why was there no sign of an emergency? Why was the car simply abandoned on the side? of a quiet highway, miles away from their home and from any known family or friends. It was baffling. The more the investigators looked into it, the more mysterious it became. The community reacts in the days following the Wrights' disappearance. The small town of Brookville was gripped by fear and uncertainty. The residents, who had known the Wrights as a quiet but kind family, were left to wonder what had happened to them. Had they run away? Had they been taken? Or had something far more sinister occurred? In a community where everyone knew each other's business, people couldn't stop talking. Speculation ran wild. Was it a kidnapping? A domestic dispute gone wrong? Or perhaps something darker, something none of them could have imagined? The theories were endless, but the evidence was not. The disappearance of the Wright family remained a chilling mystery. As the days turned into weeks, the question on everyone's mind was simple. Where were they? As the days turned into weeks, the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the Wright family only deepened. Theories began to swirl, and everyone in Brookville, from the local townsfolk to the police officers and even the FBI, had their own suspicions. What had really happened to the Wrights? Was it a case of foul play, a planned escape, or something even more inexplicable? With every passing day, the puzzle grew more complex. The foul play theory, one of the first theories to emerge, was that the Wrights had fallen victim to foul play. The idea that someone had kidnapped or harmed them seemed plausible to many, especially given the strange circumstances of their disappearance. But if it was a crime, who could have been responsible? The town's residents, who knew the Wrights, well, couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm them. Stephen Wright had no known enemies, no debts, and no history of violent confrontations. Lisa, too, was known for her gentle nature, and the children, Emily and Jacob, were beloved by everyone who knew them. But that didn't rule out the possibility of a random act of violence. The police began by looking into people who had interacted with the family in the days leading up to their disappearance. They focused on Stephen's auto repair shop, which he ran on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, just a small garage, but it was a popular spot for the locals who needed car repairs. One of the employees at the shop, a man named Frank Roberts, had been working with Stephen in the days before the disappearance. Frank, in his early 40s, was described as friendly, but there were whispers that he had been in a heated argument with Stephen over some minor business matters. Still, no evidence was found to suggest that Frank had any involvement in the family's disappearance. Then there was the neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, who had last spoken with Lisa Wright on the afternoon of April 28th. The two women had been close friends, and Lisa had confided in her about some personal worries. But when questioned by the police, Mrs. Delaney denied knowing anything that could explain the disappearance. She seemed genuinely shocked by the whole situation, and investigators found no reason to suspect her. There was also the unsettling discovery of the family's car in the middle of nowhere, an area that no one had ever mentioned. Could someone have lured the family out to that remote location? Was it a planned attack? But as the investigation continued, no signs of forced entry, robbery, or violence were found. It was baffling. The more investigators looked, the less sense it all made. If the Wrights had been kidnapped, why hadn't there been any ransom demand? And why hadn't anyone seen or heard anything suspicious in the area? The lack of evidence and any solid leads left the authorities with more questions than answers. Foul play seemed possible, but there was no clear motive. As the weeks passed, the theory of foul play became harder to support. There were no signs of a struggle, and no suspects with a clear motive emerged. It was as if the family had simply vanished, without a trace or explanation. The escape theory, another theory that emerged, was that the Wrights had planned to disappear on their own. This was an unsettling thought, especially given how much they had seemed to be a family rooted in their small-town life. Why would they leave everything behind? Why would they abandon their home, their dog, their lives? But as investigators dug deeper into the Wrights' lives, some details began to surface that seemed to support this theory. For one, Stephen Wright had suddenly closed his auto shop just days before the family vanished. He had no financial troubles, no outstanding debts. But some of his friends recalled that he had been acting oddly in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. He was more reclusive, less engaged with the community, and spent long hours alone at the shop, as if he were preparing for something. Then there was Lisa. Neighbors reported seeing her walking alone in the evenings during the weeks before the disappearance. She often looked lost in thought, as though she had something on her mind. Some even said they overheard her talking to Stephen about starting a new life, far away from the stress of their small town. Could it be possible that the Wrights had staged their own disappearance? Had they decided to leave their old life behind and start anew? But again, there were inconsistencies. If the family had planned to run away, why did they leave everything behind? Why was there no evidence of their preparation? No packed bags, no money taken, no clear departure plan? And why, after so many years of living in Brookville, would they suddenly want to leave? Nothing about their lives pointed to an escape. They seemed like an ordinary family, with no pressing reasons to disappear. This theory, too, had its holes: the unexplained factor, supernatural or mental breakdown. As the investigation continued to stagnate, some of the more bizarre theories began to gain traction. Rumors started to spread throughout the town, especially as more people spoke about the strange behavior of the Wrights in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. Some suggested that the Wrights had fallen victim to a supernatural force. There were whispers of strange lights seen in the sky near their home, and some locals recalled that Lisa had spoken about a calling she felt to move away from the town, as though some mysterious force was drawing her and her family into the unknown. Of course, there was no evidence to support these theories, but the more people talked, the more the mysterious and eerie elements surrounding the case became part of the town's folklore. Others speculated that Stephen had experienced some kind of mental breakdown. Perhaps the pressures of life in a small town had become too much for him, and he had snapped, taking his family with him in some sort of fugue state. This theory seemed far-fetched, but it wasn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. The problem, however, was that there was no clear evidence of Stephen suffering from any kind of mental health crisis. No one who knew him reported any unusual behavior, and he had not shown any signs of depression or distress. Theories collide as weeks turned into months. The theories surrounding the disappearance of the Wright family continued to swirl. Some believed they had been the victims of a random crime. Others thought they had staged their own escape, and still others believed something more mysterious was at play. With each new theory, the case grew more complicated. No one knew what to believe. All they had were questions, and no answers to as the weeks turned into months. The search for the Wright family became more than just a local effort. It became a national story. News outlets from across the country picked up the case, drawn to the chilling nature of their disappearance. In the small town of Brookville, however, the search efforts were driven by a more personal motive: the desire to find the family, to uncover the truth, and to bring them home. The search efforts by the time the FBI became involved, the initial search efforts had already stretched across hundreds of miles of rugged terrain. The Wright family's car had been found deep in the woods, but no trace of them could be found in the area. Despite this, authorities didn't give up. The FBI deployed specialized search teams, including dog units trained in tracking scents. Volunteers from the community came out in droves, scanning the dense forest near Highway 22, hoping to find anything that would lead them to the missing family. It wasn't just the woods they searched. Authorities also expanded the search to nearby rivers, lakes, and even caves, believing that perhaps the Wrights had met with an accident while traveling and had been thrown into the wilderness. The local police conducted door-to-door searches, asking everyone in town if they had seen anything unusual during the days leading up to the disappearance. Forensics teams combed the Wrights' home again, re-examining every inch of the house, looking for new clues, no matter how small. Yet, after weeks of intensive searching, the outcome was the same. There was no sign of the Wright family. No new clues. No new leads. Only more questions. The emotional toll as the search for the Wrights dragged on. The emotional toll began to weigh heavily on the community. The Wrights had been a beloved family, the kind of family that everyone knew and trusted. They were the parents who volunteered at school events, the couple who always stopped to chat with neighbors, and the kids who played outside with a friendly, carefree spirit. The idea that they could vanish without a trace was unfathomable. Friends, family, and neighbors rallied together, hoping that their collective efforts could somehow lead to a breakthrough. Every candlelight vigil, every flyer posted, every conversation with the police seemed to offer a shred of hope, but the passage of time only deepened the despair. The absence of the Wrights left a gaping hole in the town of Brookville. For Lisa's parents, the disappearance was particularly devastating. They couldn't understand how their daughter and her family could simply vanish. The two sides of the family, once close-knit and full of love, now found themselves isolated by grief and confusion. Lisa's mother, Carol, pleaded with the media to keep the case alive, begging for anyone who might have information to come forward. But despite their best efforts, nothing new emerged. The community was left to question everything they had ever known about the Wright family. Could they really have vanished on their own? Or was there something darker at play, something that no one had suspected? The impact on the town. The disappearance of the Wright family had a profound impact on Brookville. The town, once a place of quiet charm, became haunted by the mystery that surrounded the family's vanishing. People who had once known each other by name now kept their distance, unsure of what to believe. Rumors spread like wildfire, and everyone began to second-guess the people they thought they knew. It wasn't just the Wrights who had vanished. It was a piece of the town's innocence. Local businesses suffered as people became more fearful of leaving their homes. People stopped gathering in the town square, and the once bustling local market now felt eerily quiet. The people of Brookville were no longer just looking for the Wrights. They were looking for answers, for closure, for something to bring peace to their fractured community. For the Wright children's classmates, the disappearance was a harsh reality they couldn't quite understand. Emily and Jacob were popular at school, and their friends struggled with the notion that their friends might never come back. The uncertainty left them confused and scared. The school became a somber place where whispers about the family's disappearance filled the air. In the years that followed, the impact of the Wrights' disappearance continued to be felt in Brookville. It was a quiet town, but now there was always an undercurrent of tension. People spoke in hushed tones when the subject came up, and for many, the mystery became a dark chapter in the town's history. The long-term effects on the family. The Wrights' disappearance also had a lasting effect on their extended family. Lisa's parents, Carol and Henry, never gave up hope. They remained in Brookville, even as the years passed. They kept hoping for the phone call, the knock on the door, the one moment that would explain everything. But the years brought nothing. They held on to the hope that one day, their daughter and grandchildren would come back, but the passing time made it increasingly difficult to hold on to that belief. Carol often visited the spot where the car had been found, staring into the woods, hoping for a sign that her daughter was still out there. It became an almost ritualistic part of her life, waiting for closure that never seemed to come. Lisa's parents, too, became part of the town's quiet mourning. They attended vigils, helped distribute flyers, and even started their own campaign to raise awareness of the case. But as the years dragged on, the pain of waiting became unbearable. They had no answers, just the echo of their daughter's absence today. Case that still haunts despite all the efforts in the passing years. The case of the Wright family's disappearance remains unsolved. Authorities closed the case in 2000, citing a lack of evidence. But for those who knew the family, and for those who lived through the mystery, the disappearance of the Wright family will never truly be closed. The search for the truth continues. Even now, as new theories emerge and old ones are revisited. Every few years, the story resurfaces in the media, and the mystery is briefly reignited, but the answers remain elusive. Some believe the Wrights may have run away, others think they were victims of a cruel crime, and some still wonder if there was something supernatural at play. But no matter how many theories emerge, the truth remains buried. For the town of Brookville, the disappearance of the Wright family is a wound that hasn't healed. It's a story of love, loss, and the endless search for answers, one that may never be fully resolved. The mystery surrounding the disappearance of the Wright family continues to haunt not only the town of Brookville, but also the countless individuals who have followed the case over the years. As time has passed, the questions that once seemed so simple have become deeper and more elusive. What really happened to Stephen, Lisa, Emily, and Jacob? Are they still out there, somewhere, living a new life? Or did something far darker take place that no one has been able to uncover? The lingering questions over the years. There have been countless theories, but there has never been any hard evidence to answer the questions once and for all. The Wright family's case is full of contradictions, gaps in the timeline, and unsettling details that continue to puzzle investigators. The search for answers is far from over. If anything, The mystery has only deepened with time. One of the biggest unanswered questions is why the Wrights' car was found so far from their home, abandoned in a remote part of the woods. The vehicle had been involved in a crash, but there were no signs of the family being injured. No blood, no broken limbs, no signs that they had been in a hurry or in danger when the crash occurred. Why did they leave the car? Where did they go after that? In the early days of the investigation, authorities considered the possibility that the family had been involved in a roadside accident and had walked away from the scene. But the surrounding area was thick with trees and rough terrain. If they had walked, why hadn't anyone seen them? And why was the car left running, the keys still in the ignition? It simply didn't make sense. Another key question that has never been answered is why the Wrights left behind so many personal items. Their wallets, phones, and even their beloved dog were left behind. Had they been abducted? Did they leave in the middle of the night, under some kind of duress? Or, as some have suggested, did they leave voluntarily? If they had staged their disappearance, why didn't they take the things they would need to survive? They could have easily packed a bag or taken some money, but they didn't. It seemed as though they simply vanished, taking nothing with them. The biggest mystery of all remains why. After so many years, the case remains unsolved. The FBI, local law enforcement, and countless volunteers have all spent thousands of hours trying to piece together what happened to the Wright family. But despite the extensive search efforts and the many theories that have emerged, the truth has never come to light. The possibility of new evidence every now and then, new pieces of evidence emerge, or old leads are revisited. In 2005, a new theory gained attention when a hiker reported finding a set of footprints near the area where the Wright family's car had been discovered. The footprints were clear, and they appeared to belong to someone of Emily's age. The discovery sparked a renewed search in the woods, but nothing substantial came of it. The footprints led nowhere. And so, like many other pieces of evidence, it became just another dead end. In 2015, another breakthrough seemed promising. A man named David Thompson, a local who had been away from Brookville for years, came forward with a strange account. He claimed that he had seen the Wright family in a remote cabin in the woods just days after their disappearance. According to Thompson, the family appeared disheveled and fearful, but when he tried to approach them, they vanished into the woods before he could speak with them. The police investigated the lead, but once again, nothing substantial was uncovered. While these new leads seemed to suggest that the case wasn't completely closed, they were never able to provide the answers that investigators had hoped for. For every new piece of evidence, the mystery seemed to only grow more perplexing. Could these sightings be a coincidence? Could the Wrights still be out there, living in isolation, too afraid to return home? The case reopened as the years pass. Many people have wondered whether the case could ever be reopened with new technology or insights. Could modern forensic techniques or advancements in tracking technology help uncover the truth? Could the development of DNA analysis, more sophisticated search methods, or new witness testimony provide the breakthrough needed to solve the case? Unfortunately, for the Wrights families and the people of Brookville, the possibility of answers feels as distant as ever. With the passage of time, memories fade, and the evidence becomes more difficult to find. The small town has moved on, but the questions still linger. Every few years, a renewed public interest in the case sparks fleeting hope, but it never lasts long enough to bring about the closure that so many desperately seek. The legacy of the Wright family. While the Wright family may never be found, their disappearance continues to have an impact on those who were closest to them. For their extended family, especially Lisa's parents, the mystery has remained a painful and unresolved chapter in their lives. Every year, they hold vigils in memory of their daughter and grandchildren. They refuse to give up hope that one day, the truth will come to light. The Wright family's disappearance has also left a lasting mark on the town of Brookville. It's a story that still gets whispered about when people talk about the past. The once tight-knit community remains fractured by the tragedy, and many of its residents still wonder if they'll ever get the answers they've been waiting for. Some hope that one day, someone will come forward with the missing piece of the puzzle. Others have simply given up. The enduring mystery in the end, the disappearance of the Wright family, is a mystery that may never be solved. Theories abound, but none provide concrete answers. The case remains open, but the trail is cold. The Wright family, once so vibrant and full of life, may never be seen again, but their story will never be forgotten. As we reflect on the case, we are left with one haunting question. What happened to the Wright family in 1995? If you have any information that could shed light on the mystery of the Wright family's disappearance, or if you have your own theories, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below or share this video to keep their story alive. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Maybe one day, the truth will emerge. Until then, we continue the search for answers.